AfroWealth Chronicles. Today, we will delve into the hidden truth about Nigerian import duties. What they don't want you to know. Nigeria's import duties play a crucial role in shaping the country's trade landscape, impacting both businesses and consumers alike. The government's import duty policies are designed to generate local industries and manage the balance of trade. However, behind the official rhetoric lies a web of inefficiencies, and sometimes outright hidden truths that aren't readily apparent to the general public. This article sheds light on the hidden dynamics of Nigeria's import duties, including the loopholes, the how it affects ordinary Nigerians, and what they don't want you to know. 1. The arbitrary nature of import duties. Import duties in Nigeria are supposed to be set at specific rates, depending on the category of goods. However, hidden truths is the frequent arbitrariness in how these duties are applied. Importers often report discrepancies between the official duty rates published by the Nigerian Customs Service (NCS) and the actual amounts they are charged when their goods arrive at the ports. This inconsistency is a product of several factors, including the use of discretionary power by customs officers, the manipulation of goods classification, and the applicable fees. Businesses, often find themselves at the mercy of customs officers who can reinterpret classifications or inflate values payable duties. This results in unpredictability and higher costs, making it difficult for businesses to plan and budget. 2. Complex and opaque procedures. Nigeria's import duty system is riddled with bureaucratic red tape. Importers are required through numerous steps, including obtaining documents like the bill of lading, clean report of inspection, and others. Each step opens opportunities for delays and corruption. The process is so cumbersome that many importers must engage clearing agents to navigate the system on their behalf. These procedures are not only time-consuming but also lack transparency. While the Nigeria Customs Service has made efforts to digitalize some processes through the Nigeria Integrated Customs Information System (NICIS), bottlenecks persist. Frequent system downtime and the requirement for physical intervention by customs officers often slow the process, leading to demurrage charges for businesses. 3. High-level corruption and undue levies. Corruption in Nigeria's customs service is an open secret. Importers are often subjected to informal levies, which add significantly to the cost of. Some estimates suggest that these levies can constitute up to 50% of the total import duty costs. These unofficial payments into the pockets of customs officers and intermediaries, making Nigeria one of the most expensive countries in Africa for imports. In many cases, businesses are forced to avoid extended delays or to ensure their goods are not impounded under dubious circumstances. Corrupt practices also allow for the under-declaration of goods or undervaluation, which is beneficial to some companies but unfair to compliant businesses, leading to a distorted market. 4. The prohibited and restricted goods trap. Nigeria has a list of prohibited and restricted goods, which ostensibly serves the purpose of protecting local industries. These include items like rice, textiles, used clothing, certain types of automobiles, and more. However, this policy creates a dilemma. While the ban on some of these goods is intended to spur local production and reduce the country's reliance on imports, creates a thriving smuggling of its porous borders is a woo. Goods banned under import frequently find their way into the country through illegal channels. This undermines the very purpose of the ban and creates a double standard where some individuals and businesses profit from illicit trade while law-abiding importers are penalized with exorbitant duties. Another hidden truth is that some of the import bans are enforced selectively. Certain politically connected businesses and individuals are able to bring in banned or restricted items with impunity, while others are prosecuted. This uneven enforced skewed playing field and fosters mistrust in the system. 5. The impact on local businesses and consumers. Nigeria's import duties have a direct and substantial impact on the cost of goods in the country. High import duties are passed down the supply chain, resulting in inflated prices for consumers. Goods ranging from electronics and vehicles to food items and clothing often carry a premium in Nigeria because of the high tariffs levied on them. This also affects local businesses, particularly those that rely on imported raw materials. For example, manufacturers in industries like textiles, pharmacy, and automobile assembly depend on imports for components or ingredients that are not locally available. The high cost of importing these goods inflates their production costs, making them less competitive both locally and globally. Many local businesses call for a review of the tariff structure, as they believe that the current policies are detrimental to their survival. However, the government has been reluctant to adjust duties in favor of businesses, as they remain a significant source of revenue. The government's focus on revenue generation, instead of long-term industrial growth, is seen by many as a major policy misstep. 6. Hidden costs and multiple taxation. In addition to import duties, importers are also hit with a range of other charges, some of which are not well publicized. These include port charges, shipping line charges, container deposit fees, and fees for agencies like the National Agency for Food and Drug Control, NAFDAC, and the State of Nigeria, SUN. For instance, at Nigerian ports are subject to terminal handling charges that are far higher than in many other African countries. A report by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry found that the cost of clearing a container in Nigeria is 3 regional. This results in the cost onto consumers, further embase multiple taxation regimes at state levels. In some cases, duplication of taxes and fees, creating financial burdens for businesses. 7. Special import waivers and exemptions, a privileged few. Another hidden truth about Nigeria's import duty regime is the preferential treatment given to certain businesses through waivers and exemptions. While the official line is that these waivers are granted to promote investment in critical sectors, they are often granted to well-connected businesses or individuals with ties to the government. These waivers allow importers to bring in goods at significantly lower duty rates or even duty-free. This practice creates an uneven competitive landscape where businesses without access to such waivers are forced to pay exorbitant rates, reducing their profitability. The waiver system has also been criticized for being abused, with waivers granted for goods that do not fall under critical sectors but are instead used for personal or political gains. 8. The role of foreign exchange policies. Nigeria's foreign exchange (FX) policies also play a significant role in the import duty landscape. The country has faced severe FX shortages, particularly since the fall in oil prices in 2014, and this has affected importers in several ways. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has introduced multiple FX windows, including a ban on FX for certain import items. This has led to a situation where importers of banned items are forced to source FX from the parallel market at much higher rates. The disparity between the official exchange rate and the black market rate has resulted in higher import costs for businesses. In some cases, businesses have been forced to abandon imports altogether because the cost of sourcing FX made their goods unaffordable for the local market. This situation is exacerbated by the CBN's monetary policy, which has prioritized maintaining FX reserves over supporting the import sector. 9. Revenue generation at the expense of trade facilitation. The Nigerian government relies heavily on customs duties as a source of revenue. However, this emphasis on revenue generation has come at the expense of trade facilitation. Rather than simplifying procedures and reducing tariffs to encourage business growth and competitiveness, the government has maintained high duty rates and complex processes to maximize its earnings from the sector. This approach has been criticized for being short-sighted, as it hinders the development of a robust import-export sector. Experts argue that by focusing on immediate revenue generation, the government is stifling long-term economic growth, as high import duties discourage investment and business expansion. Additionally, it discourages international investors who are deterred by the high cost of importing goods into the country. 10. What needs to change? The way forward. To address the hidden truths behind Nigeria's import duties, several changes need to be implemented. Firstly, there is a need for greater transparency in the customs process. This includes reducing the discretionary power of customs officers, eliminating unofficial levies, and simplifying the import process to reduce delays and corruption. Additionally, the government must reconsider its tariff structure, particularly for industries that rely on imported raw materials. Reducing tariffs in key sectors could stimulate growth, create jobs, and make Nigerian businesses more competitive both locally and globally. Furthermore, the waiver system should be reformed to prevent abuse and ensure that it genuinely benefits critical sectors of the economy. By implementing these reforms, Nigeria could create a more business-friendly environment that supports growth and encourages investment. Lastly, addressing the FX issues is crucial. The government must work towards stabilizing the FX market, reducing the disparity between official and parallel market rates, and ensuring that businesses have access to foreign currency at reasonable rates. This would help to lower import costs and make goods more affordable for Nigerian consumers. 11. Protectionism and the local industry paradox. One of the justifications for Nigeria's high import duties is protectionism, the need to safeguard local industries from foreign competition. In theory, protecting local industries should encourage domestic production, create jobs, and foster industrialization. However, the reality is far more complex, and the hidden truth is that protectionism in Nigeria often backfires. Many of Nigeria's industries, such as agriculture, textiles, and manufacturing, are not yet competitive enough to meet the country's demand for goods. The high import duties make imported goods more expensive, but locally produced goods are often insufficient in quality or quantity to fill the gap. For instance, despite the import restrictions on rice, the local rice industry struggles to meet the demand, leading to smuggling and illegal imports. Consumers, in turn, are forced to pay exorbitant prices for both locally produced and imported goods, as neither market functions efficiently under the current trade policies. Protectionism, without the corresponding industrial support policies, such as infrastructure development, access to credit, and technological advancement, often leads to monopolistic practices by local industries. Some local producers, shielded from foreign competition, raise prices and lower quality, knowing consumers have limited options. This reduces consumer welfare and hampers economic growth. 12. The border closure controversy. A particularly controversial example of Nigeria's protectionist policies was the border closure between 2019 and 2020. The closure aimed to curb smuggling, particularly of rice, poultry, and fuel, and to protect local producers. However, the closure had far-reaching negative impacts that were not immediately apparent to the public. Firstly, the closure disrupted trade not only with neighboring countries but also within Nigeria itself. Many Nigerian businesses, particularly those in border regions, suffered from the sudden halt in cross-border trade. Thousands of jobs were lost as a result of the closure, especially in the informal sector, which relies heavily on small-scale cross-border trade. Moreover, the border closure led to inflationary pressures as the prices of goods like food and consumer goods soared. The local agricultural sector could not immediately scale up production to meet the demand, leading to shortages and higher prices. The hidden truth is that while the government framed the border closure as a move to protect the economy, the policy disproportionately hurt lower-income Nigerians who were already struggling with high inflation and low purchasing power. 13. Double standards in trade policy enforcement. A hidden dynamic in Nigeria's import duty system is the selective enforcement of trade policies. While the government enforces import restrictions and high tariffs on the general public, some politically connected individuals and businesses operate above the law. These entities are often granted waivers or turn a blind eye to the very restrictions meant to protect local industries. For example, there have been instances where powerful individuals have been allowed to import banned items, such as foreign rice or luxury goods, without facing the penalties that ordinary Nigerians would. This selective enforcement creates a dual system, where the elite benefit from loopholes while the majority bear the brunt of high import costs. This dual standard undermines trust in the system and creates a perception that Nigeria's trade policies are not designed to serve the broader public good, but are instead manipulated to serve the interests of a few. This has long-term consequences for investor confidence and the overall credibility of Nigeria's trade policies. 14. The impact of international trade agreements. Nigeria is a signatory to various international trade agreements, such as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AfCFTA. These agreements are supposed to open up Nigeria's markets, reduce tariffs, and promote trade across Africa. The spirit of these agreements, as high tariffs and restrictive policies create barriers to trade. The hidden truth is that while Nigeria is committed on paper to promoting free trade across the continent, its protectionist policies and high import duties make it difficult for businesses from other African countries to access the Nigerian market. This has led to friction within the AfCFTA framework, as other countries view Nigeria as not fully living up to its trade commitments. Moreover, Nigerian businesses that could benefit from reduced tariffs under AfCFTA face the same internal challenges of high local costs, corruption, and inefficiencies that make it difficult for them to compete internationally. Without addressing these systemic issues, Nigeria risks missing out on the opportunities presented by international trade agreements. 15. Lack of incentives for import substitution. A glaring issue in Nigeria's import duty regime is the lack of incentives for import substitution. While high tariffs are intended to discourage imports and promote local production, there is insufficient support for businesses to actually produce the goods that the country needs. Nigeria's infrastructure deficit, particularly in energy and transport, makes local manufacturing expensive and inefficient. For example, businesses face frequent power outages and must rely on expensive generators to maintain production. The cost of transportation, due to poor roads and inadequate rail networks, further into doing business. These challenges make it difficult for local businesses to compete with imported goods, even when high tariffs are in place. Without significant investment in infrastructure and targeted industrial policies, the country's import substitution efforts will continue to falter. What the government doesn't readily acknowledge is that tariffs alone are not enough to develop local industries. There needs to be a comprehensive approach that includes infrastructure development, access to finance, and technical support. 16. The informal sector's workaround, smuggling and parallel markets. A significant but hidden part of Nigeria's import economy operates through informal channels. Smuggling and parallel markets have become survival mechanisms for businesses and individuals trying to navigate the high cost of imports and restrictive trade policies. The informal sector, which accounts for a large portion of Nigeria's economy, relies on goods that enter the country illegally or through unofficial means. Goods such as electronics, clothing, food items, and even fuel are regularly smuggled into Nigeria through porous borders. These goods bypass official customs procedures, avoiding duties and taxes, which allows them to be sold at much lower prices than goods that go through official channels. Smuggling is so widespread that in some sectors, the parallel market is larger than the formal market. The government's high tariffs and restrictive trade policies are partly to blame for the flourishing of the smuggling industry. By making legal imports prohibitively expensive, the government has inadvertently incentivized smuggling. Consumers, in turn, seek out cheaper smuggled goods, creating a vicious cycle that undermines legitimate businesses and government revenue. 17. Nigeria's reliance on imports, a structural problem. One of the underlying issues behind Nigeria's import duty regime is the country's over-reliance on imports. Despite its large population and abundant natural resources, Nigeria imports a significant portion of its consumer goods, machinery, and industrial inputs. The country's manufacturing sector is underdeveloped, and there is insufficient local production to meet demand. This structural reliance on imports means that any disruptions to the import system, whether through high duties, currency fluctuations, or border closures, have a direct and immediate impact on the Nigerian economy. The high import duties are symptomatic of a deeper issue: Nigeria's failure to develop its industrial base and diversify its economy beyond oil. While the government has implemented policies aimed at promoting local production, such as the import substitution industrialization strategy, progress has been slow. Many sectors, such as agriculture and manufacturing, continue to rely on imported inputs, which are subject to high tariffs. Until Nigeria addresses this structural dependency, its economy will remain vulnerable to external shocks and policy missteps. 18. The human cost. Impact on low-income Nigerians. The final hidden truth about Nigeria's import duties is their disproportionate impact on low-income Nigerians. While high tariffs and import restrictions are framed as policies to protect the local economy, the reality is that they often hurt the most vulnerable in society. High import duties lead to increased prices for basic goods such as food, clothing, and household items. These higher costs are passed down to consumers, many of whom live on low incomes. The rising cost of living, exacerbated by import duties, makes it difficult for ordinary Nigerians to afford basic necessities. In some cases, the price of imported goods doubles or triples due to the added costs from duties, levies, and informal payments. For low-income Nigerians, this creates a situation where imported goods are out of reach, while locally produced goods, when available, are often of lower quality or still expensive. The result is a decrease in purchasing power and a lower standard of living for many Nigerians. Conclusion: unmasking the truth for a better future. Nigeria's import duty system is far more complex and problematic than it appears on the surface. While import duties are a necessary tool for revenue generation and protecting local industries, the hidden truths about their implementation reveal a system riddled with inefficiencies, corruption, and unintended consequences. From arbitrary charges and corruption to the disproportionate impact on low-income consumers and the thriving parallel market, the system is in urgent need of reform. For Nigeria to realize its economic potential, the government must adopt a more transparent, efficient, and business-friendly approach to import duties. This includes reducing the discretionary power of customs officers, streamlining the import process, and addressing the systemic issues that drive smuggling and informal trade. By reforming its import duty regime, Nigeria can create a more equitable and prosperous economy that benefits all citizens, not just the privileged few. Welcome to AfroWealth Chronicles. Today, we will delve into the hidden truth about Nigeria's import duties, what they don't want you to know. Nigeria's import duties play a crucial role in shaping the country's trade landscape, impacting both businesses and consumers alike. The government's import duty policies are designed to generate revenue, protect local industries, and manage the balance of trade. However, behind the official rhetoric lies a web of complexities, inefficiencies, and sometimes outright hidden truths that aren't readily apparent to the general public. This article sheds light on the hidden dynamics of Nigeria's import duties, including the loopholes, the influence of corruption, how it affects ordinary Nigerians, and what they don't want you to know. 1. The arbitrary nature of import duties. Import duties in Nigeria are supposed to be set at specific rates, depending on the category of goods. However, one of the hidden truths is the frequent arbitrariness in how these duties are applied. Importers often report discrepancies between the official duty rates published by the Nigerian Customs Service, NCS, and the actual amounts they are charged when their goods arrive at the ports.